1.5 billion people and you can't find 11 players for a football team? If you go to Instagram and scroll through the comments of any Indian football reel, chances are you've seen this exact line. Thousands upon thousands of comments, all basically saying the same thing. Indian football is a joke. Although it's a little harsh. It's hard to blame people for thinking that way when superstar players like Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe or Haaland appear on their feet every second. India's FIFA ranking is currently 138 in the world out of 211 total countries. It takes 10 mouse scrolls to even see our name on that list. You see, this hurts a little more because football is the world's biggest sport. Half the globe's population are football fans. So naturally, we want to do well, right? But if you look at India, it's been monopolized by one sport and you know which one I'm talking about. We live in a country where IPL victories can bring entire cities to a standstill. Meanwhile, when the Indian football team wins an important international match, most Indians don't even hear about it. In fact, a 275 crore broadcasting agreement last year in the biggest football league in India has now dropped to 9 crore, a 97% fall. Compare this with the IPL's numbers and it looks unbelievable. Even the world's biggest football leagues in Europe don't make as much money as the IPL. So what's really happening? Why is Indian football being neglected this way and why has India never had a superstar like Messi or Ronaldo in our ranks? So let's unwire it. When you think about football, well, you don't really think about Indian football. You think about European football, the World Cup and the Champions League. None of them are in India. But there was once a time when we were one of the strongest football teams in Asia. In 1950, India qualified for the FIFA World Cup in Brazil. Yes, the actual World Cup. And then we never went. Most people know the popular version of the story. The one that says India couldn't participate because FIFA wouldn't allow us to play barefoot. Because that's what we were doing all throughout the 1940s. But in reality, things were so much more complicated. The All India Football Federation, or the AIFF, believed that the Olympic football carried much more weight than the World Cup. Add that to the high cost of even taking the team there, and we ended up declining to join. Think about how insane that sounds today. Modern Indian football fans dream about qualifying for a World Cup, and we just said no. But what's more surprising is that we were never the underdog team in world football. We won trophies after trophies in Asia and even became the first Asian nation in history to reach an Olympic football in semi-final. At the center of all this success was one man, Syed Abdul Rahim. If Indian football has a forgotten founding father, it's probably him. Under his leadership, India developed some of the greatest footballers the country has ever seen. We even made a movie about him 2 years ago. That's how important he was for Indian football. If you went back to the early 1960s and asked someone which Asian countries would dominate football in the future, India would absolutely be part of that conversation. So what even happened? At this point, most people would probably say the answer is obvious. India became obsessed with cricket, football got left behind. It's simple, right? But the more you think about it, the less that explanation actually makes sense because lots of countries love multiple sports. Think about the US. They somehow managed to love basketball, baseball, and American football at the same time. And with England, it's football, cricket, and rugby. The existence of one successful sport doesn't automatically kill another. But that phenomena seems to exist only in India. Take a look at what's really happening here. We need to go back to 1983, when India won the Cricket World Cup. This was the start of an ecosystem. Television is spreading across India and suddenly everyone wants a piece of the action. Every company wanted to be associated with cricket and every kid wanted to be the next Kapil Dev and Sunil Gavaskar. And here's why a very interesting cycle comes up. More viewers bring more money. More money brings better infrastructure. Better infrastructure produces better players. And better players attract more viewers. There's one particular element in this loop that we'll talk about soon, but I'm sure you can see how this is a formula for success. Today, you can see its results everywhere. When RCB finally won the IPL after 18 years last year and then again this year, Did you see celebrations stop in Bengaluru? No. Social media had a meltdown, and people who had never visited Karnataka celebrated like their hometown club had won a trophy. And honestly, that feeling should sound very familiar to football fans. A Manchester United supporter in Kerala doesn't need to live in Manchester. We clearly have football fans here. According to a 2024 survey, 305 million people in India are considered football fans. That's 1 in 5 people. Football runs in the veins of residents in specific regions in India, and it's difficult to explain unless you live there. In Kolkata, support for Mohun Bagan or East Bengal is a generational inheritance. In fact, this rivalry runs all the way back to the partition, when millions of migrants crossed over from East Bengal, now Bangladesh, into West Bengal. Supporting East Bengal became a way for many families to hold on to an identity that they left behind. And for Mohun Bagan supporters, it was their way of representing their city. Another interesting club is the Mohammedan Sporting Club, also in Kolkata. It was founded way back in 1891, 8 whole years even before FC Barcelona was founded. This club became the symbol of the Muslim football culture in India and was even one of the very first clubs to challenge British clubs back then. We've had a lot of success and love in football back in the day, but our love for football just keeps on going. With the World Cup happening right now, Kerala's gearing up for sleepless nights to stay up and watch games. India is one of the only places other than South America where you will find giant cutouts of Messi and Ronaldo in towns and villages. I've seen it myself. The culture was always there, but culture and systems are not the same thing. And this is where countries like Japan and South Korea changed the game. During the 1980s, Japan wasn't a football powerhouse. In fact, it was baseball that dominated the country. And to turn things around, Japan built a system for football's growth. All the time, Japan's top competition was called the Japan Soccer League, or the JSL. Most of the teams are owned by large corporations and represented companies rather than cities. Nobody paid attention to this. Japan realized that if football was ever going to compete with baseball, they would have to step things up a little bit. So in 1993, they launched the J-League, a fully professional league built around city-based clubs. It was Japan's way of showing that they were serious about professionalizing football. And these efforts really speak for itself. Japan has never missed a FIFA World Cup since 1998, just 5 years after the J-League started. South Korea did the same thing, and they've qualified for every World Cup since 1986. This is what makes India's football story so frustrating. Our football prowess started much before them, and somehow we've still been lagging behind in creating systems. The thing is, these systems won't automatically bring us trophies. No system can do that. All systems can do is create great players to help us get those trophies. Every academy and scouting network exists only for a single reason, and that's to take a talented kid and give them the best possible chance of becoming a professional footballer. That's the only way the next generation of superstar footballers can emerge here from India. For Argentina, it's Messi. For Portugal, it's Ronaldo. For India, it is Sunil Chhetri. You hear these names and you think they must have been extremely talented. You're not wrong, but if talent was all that mattered, Sunil Chhetri should have become one of the most famous athletes in the world, right? He scored more international goals than many recognizable football legends around the world. But outside football circles, millions of Indians know more about the bench players in the IPL than they do know about Sunil Chhetri. How can a country produce a player of Chhetri's quality and still fail to build a football culture around him? The answer is that talent is only half the story. In football, talent is actually the easy part. The hard part is developing. Okay, imagine two 12-year-olds living in India today. One dreams of becoming a cricketer, the other dreams of becoming a footballer. Neither of them knows whether they'll succeed, but one of them can at least see the road ahead, and that's where infrastructure element I spoke about earlier comes into play. School cricket leads to district cricket leads to state cricket leads to domestic tournaments lead to IPL scouting networks. Even if the odds are incredibly small, the pathway is visible. But for football, there isn't anything close to this pathway. For decades, Indian football never had the kind of league structure that's out there in the world. In England, football is organized like a pyramid. hundreds of clubs exist across multiple divisions connected through promotion and relegation. A small club can dream of climbing higher. Case in point, Leicester City being promoted to the Premier League from the lower divisions and winning the whole thing in the 2015-2016 season. Their probability of winning was 0.004%. Although India does have a similar pyramid system, we never built it large enough. For most of our history, Bengal had its football ecosystems, Goa had its football ecosystems, and Kerala had its football ecosystems. But there was no national structure tying everything together. In fact, former AIFF General Secretary Kushal Das openly admitted that India's football problem was its league structure. Every state held its own competition, but the winners never competed against each other. That's essentially what Indian football looked like for decades. A few talented players competing only against the local opposition. There were no opportunities to test themselves worldwide. The AIFF eventually realized this and launched the National Football League in 1996. Later came the I-League. Then came the Indian Super League, the top league in India. On paper, this feels like progress, right? But some problems were still there. Even today, ISL teams play a very short season compared to the world's successful football leagues. Premier League players can spend 10 months a year playing competitive football, each team playing 38 league games in a single season. Compare that with the ISL teams that only plays 13 games in one season. Thrice is less. Former India coach Igor Stimac repeatedly argued that Indian footballers need around 50 competitive matches annually if they want to compete with Asia's best nations. His point wasn't only about the number of games, but more so the competitive environment that pushes players to improve. And when we come to perhaps the most important question of all, who is even developing these young players before they become professional? Because by the time the world saw Messi, Barcelona had spent years investing in him through La Masia, Barcelona's youth academy at the age of 13, which has given birth to other incredible players like Iniesta, Puyol, Xavi. In the case of Ronaldo, Portugal's youth football system had already shaped him through academies and youth competitions way before he played for Manchester United. What our national football associations miss out is that the superstar is the final chapter of the story. The development beforehand is the key, which is what they've historically struggled with. Indian clubs would need constant funding for at least 2 decades, otherwise they risk shutting down. But the government also has refused to assist in funding the league. The ISL is also failing to generate enough revenue to increase its popularity. In fact, a lot of the football clubs in the ISL don't even make back more than half of their expenses per season. If you pair this information with the state of investments in grassroots football academies, it's a disaster. By the time a European academy player turns 18, he may already have spent more than a decade inside a structured development environment. They join youth setups between 6 to 8 years old, but in India, we do it between 13 to 15 years. Double the global standard. Our development of youth teams is an afterthought because the AIFF doesn't mandate that ISL teams invest in their youth. Take cricket as its comparison and you'll be shocked. The BCCI pays a lot of money every year to state associations to help them invest in youth cricket. Even conducting camps and competitions from under 14 to under 23, players of the under 19 Indian team that won the World Cup were also paid 40 lakh each at the end of it. So that's exactly why football's biggest challenge in India is uncertainty. Compared to 20 years ago, the situation today is different. For most of Indian football history, football lived inside specific regions. But today, a teenager in Bengaluru, Mumbai, Delhi, Kochi or Guwahati can now watch every major European league live from their phone. In fact, a survey conducted showed that over 38% of Manchester United fan base is in India. Our presence speaks for itself. And with the World Cup happening right now, that effect becomes even more obvious. There's even stories of hardcore football fans reminiscing about sleepless nights while watching the World Cup in 1994, and how we pack pubs and screenings just to watch a football match. Even though the time difference makes it hard to watch these games, the people of India say fans always find a way. That's changing the conversations around football. Before, it was all about the national team, and every competition raised the same questions. Why are we losing? Why are we ranked so low? The same thing on repeat. But if there's anything that can be learned from successful footballing countries, it's that national teams are usually the last thing that improves. Take Germany, for example. When Germany crashed out of Euro 2000, the country rebuilt its foundations and made it mandatory for clubs to invest in their youth academies. A little over a decade later, that generation won the World Cup. And for the first time in a long time, Indian football seems to be thinking along the similar lines. In 2023, the AIFF came out with something called Vision 2047, which was a roadmap to reach millions of children in India. They would do this through better grassroots programs, expanding football education and coaching in schools, and by building a stronger league pyramid. Now, if you're an Indian football fan, you might be rolling your eyes right now thinking that all plans are just that. Plans. It's all about the execution. And you're right, it is. A roadmap won't create new football pitches or better coaches and training. And after decades of administrative failures and unfinished promises, you have every right to be skeptical. But the fact that the conversations around football are beginning to change in India is a good reason to be optimistic. Somewhere in India right now, there's probably a kid juggling a football before school. Somewhere else, another kid is playing barefoot on a dusty ground with his friends. Maybe both of them may become superstars. Maybe neither of them do. But that's not the point. Where our heads need to be at is creating a country and a system capable of producing thousands of footballers. Maybe then we'll find our superstar. And if we ever get that right, then one day when the World Cup comes around again, Indian football fans might finally stop asking each other which country they're going to support this time, because there will be only one answer.